It's Brian Preston, the Money Guy.
The next question we have is from Kevin. Kevin said he's tempted to divert savings away from retirement to save for his first home. How do you balance saving for retirement versus purchasing your first home? And he gave some more information. So he's 30 years old, looking for his first home. He's saving 30% of his income for retirement, and he makes $65K a year. But it sounds like a lot of us out there, he might be having trouble buying his first home and wants to know how to prioritize that.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I know that is a big one. First, Kevin, here's the good news about first-time home purchases is that we give you tons of grace on that down payment. Don't be beating yourself up thinking I got to get to 20% because there's a lot of talking heads out there in the financial space tell you got to put down 20% on that first home. That's tough. I mean, it just is hard to get there. So I'm going to tell you, on your first home, I think it's okay if you're only putting down 3 to 5%. So that's going to take a lot of weight off of your shoulders on how much you have to do. And when we do that on purpose and we build this into the ground rules of our financial order of operations, if you're checking out the full deep dive course, which is at learn.moneyguy.com, we actually cover some of this stuff because this was part of our, when we revised this or updated the financial order of operations course, we covered this specifically. But I do think that it's one of those things where if you know you only have to save 3 to 5%, now how does this fit into the whole process? And we already know step 4 is cash reserves. You know, if you think about, you're trying to figure out 3 to 6 months on your cash reserves, I would let this be part of that decision-making process too, is that if you know you're 3 to 6 months on your cash reserves, but you also want to have a down payment on your house in the next, 18 months, 24 months, or 36 months, build that into that step number 4, which is cash reserves, because if the number is a lesser amount, like 3 or 5%, I think you can, especially with somebody who's saving 30% of their income. You can, look, I'm going to give you a lot of grace. That first 25%, that's what it takes to get to step 7 of the financial order of operations of hyperaccumulation. So anything over that 25%, look, I'm going to give you the freedom to, there's nothing wrong with that going to the cash and equivalents while you're building up that house down payment. That's not a problem. I even going to give you the grace because I think all of us have done this. I even shared my financial mistakes on today's show when we did the full Q&A live stream. And I shared that while I was starting my business, I just didn't have a lot of money coming in, so I didn't get to maximize all the retirement accounts, including Roth IRA, which I consider some of the most valuable money that you can invest in yourself for the future. I screwed that up. So it's okay if maybe instead of saving 30%, you can go down to 20% on the traditional things like the Roth IRAs, the health savings accounts, and then even your employer plan while you're loading up the buckets for that house down payment. But you need to be scared. I always tell people when you do things that vary from this financial order of operations, if you ever get off that path, it's kind of like if you're going to pull the car, you're driving the car down the road and you're hoping that when you roll it off the road, if you got distracted or you had a flat tire and your steering wheel got yanked, you're hoping that it's a nice level roll off on grass that you can come off a little bit and then quickly recover and come back on versus you took it off a cliff. It's okay if you get diverted in the short term, but you need to be very scared and you need to also make sure that you're diverting it on a flat surface, meaning that you've kind of taken into account all the other things that are going on in your life, like there's no gaping holes in your financial future for the next 18 months that maybe you doing this retirement plan cutting into, like, I'll tell you what a gaping hole that puts you on taking the steering wheel off a cliff is if you took your emergency reserves down to 0, that would give me great pause. But somebody like yourself who's saving 30%, you probably could just now take your emergency reserves down to 3 months versus having the 6 months that you already had. Build that cash down payment for your first home purchase into the plan, and you're rolling it off track just slightly, but you're going to pull it back on. You're scared enough, you can't catch much speed there, so you go get it back on track ASAP. You're going to be okay. So that's the grace I give you. Remember, with financial stuff, this is why we did this show today. You can make lots of mistakes and still have tremendous long-term success, but you just got to do the majority of the stuff. We hear about all the time that you can get into the Hall of Fame of baseball with a 300% batting average. finance is kind of the same way. You can you can make a lot of mistakes and still have long-term success. Just make sure you are constantly paying attention, putting in the homework, and then trying to figure out when you do get off track a little bit that you're trying to figure out a plan to get it right back on course as soon as possible.